What's up, everyone? It's Mike with this old hot rod, and I figured it was about time to fire up the camera and show you guys what I'm working on today. And what I'm working on is the rear axle. I had mentioned that I was going to start working on the axle and the radius rods. This particular rear axle is a 39. It has 378 gear ratio. It's a V8 banjo rear axle. It's going to have a Hot Rod Works adapter kit. This is a closed drive rear axle, so most of you guys that you are familiar with early Fords, this would have a torque tube on it, and it would have a solid metal 1-inch drive shaft that attaches to a universal joint that would attach to the back end of the early Ford transmission. But because I'm running a small block Chevrolet and an automatic transmission with a splined drive shaft yoke, I need to run a universal drive shaft or a modern style drive shaft with universal joints, and that kit will allow you to run a modern style drive shaft with this rear axle. So it's a really handy kit, and that's going to go with the car. So I already checked my pinion angle on the rear axle, and it's about 3.5 degrees. I had done a few things differently on my 29 sedan when I built it. So I had originally used these Heim joints with these bungs. I ended up cutting them off and using a tie rod end style mount on my 29 sedan. I'm gonna end up being able to use these now. I save everything, as most guys do when you're building this stuff. This is the left-hand thread, right-hand thread, so the bungs are in there. So what I'm gonna end up doing is I'm probably just gonna end up cutting these bungs out of the ends of this radius rod, so it's probably about 1 inch up or so. You can see the weld on this one. I'm gonna cut this and then remove this tube, what's there of it, and then I'm gonna cut the front ends off of the radius rods on the car, and then slide these bungs in, and then get these tack welded in place. I'm gonna leave them tack welded in case anything needs to be changed in the future. This is only one part of the process. The next part of the process is I need to actually make the mount that these are gonna mount to. So I need to make some tabs that these are gonna slide into and bolt through. I already got the bolts. It's pretty significant hardware. It's a 5/8 inch bolt, so it's pretty good size, and that's what fits inside the eyelet on my Heim joint. Sorry, I'm gonna skip back a little bit. So I'd mentioned the Hot Rod Works kit. So this is the kit. So this is the main part of the housing that would bolt onto the front of the pinion assembly, and then this would slide onto the main shaft coming off the front of the pinion gear. You can see that large 6 or 10 spline. That 10 spline, there's a pin in there. That pin would be driven through the center of that, and then you have your U-bolts. So that assembly will help you convert a closed drive to an open drive. So this kit, like I had said, this kit will go with the car because it's something that the future owner is going to need to buy. But I already have it, and I don't have a use for it right now, so I'm going to move it along. Like I said, that's just alone, that kit just alone. At least it was $250 when I bought it. I don't know what they sell for now. I had some leftover boxing plate. I picked it up at some point from somewhere, I'm not sure. I have this piece that I've been using, cutting it off to make brackets and tabs and different things. I have another full length, and it has the section that I need for the back of the frame. It's the full height. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take 6 inches on one side and 6 inches on the other, and I'm going to mount those to the inside of the frame rail. So in the future, whoever buys this car, if they decide to box the frame, that area of the frame is already going to be boxed. So they won't have to worry about cutting around any types of mounts or anything. And then what we're going to do is I'm going to start building my mount off of that boxing plate. And what I'm going to use is a 2-inch by 2-inch, or maybe actually 2.5. So 1/8 wall, 2-inch by 2-inch box tubing. It's gonna come off the frame, it's gonna drop down, go underneath the drive shaft, back up and back to the frame rail. So it's gonna kind of be like a funky shaped U. What I need to do first, I need to get this cleaned up, get the rust off of it so I can weld on it, get the boxing plates cut down, get those tacked in place on the frame rail, and then get this built. I'm gonna get that tacked in place, making sure that my pinion angle is correct. After that, I'm gonna pull the motor and transmission back out, get my steering mounted. I'm gonna finish weld a few things while I have the motor and transmission out of the car. So let's get to work. I'm gonna get this cleaned up, get the boxing plates tacked in place, and then start building my mount. So I'm gonna have a boxing plate here, so it doesn't interfere with my transmission cross member. box is going to come down, it's going to drop down, it's going to go underneath, back up, and then back to the frame rail. And then I'll get that all welded. I'll get some tabs mounted for these. I'm probably going to end up having to heat and bend the mounts on these just a little bit, just to get them spread out just a touch so I have room for the hind joints and the hardware. Alright, so I'm going to get my boxing plates cut down, get those cleaned up, get the frame rail cleaned up where I need to be, and get those tacked in place. And then I'll start building my bracketry and everything off of that. Alright, what I'm doing now is I just set this piece of box tubing on here. Basically is where it's going to be located. I just kind of ran my marker underneath it. I made a mark. These frame rails start to flare out once you get to the back of the transmission. They flare out to go towards the rear cross member. So there's a little bit of an angle. It's not just a straight 90-degree cut. So I'm going to get this cut. Probably just go like 6 or 8 inches out. Just need to make sure there's enough room for the drive shaft and the universal joint plus the yoke. So I'll go 6 inches, then I'll drop it down, come across, and come back up. So I'm going to cut these angles first on both sides. I'll do 6 inches on both sides, get those tacked in place, and then I'll start to work on my center section, the U of the bracket. Alright, so let me get 2 of these made, and I'll get these tacked in place on either side. I'm going to cut this at 22.5 degrees. I'm going to get my big cutoff wheel. Cut it at 22.5, then my next piece will be also at 22.5. That'll give me my 45-degree angle, and then I'll have the bottom piece with my mounts, my tabs, come up again and go across. So let me get this cut. I think I'll cut this one first on my bench once I get it cleaned up, and then I'll get this one tacked on the passenger side, and we'll start connecting them. Alright, I'm going to make a quick measurement on the car itself, figure out how long these need to be, because this is one side, this is the other. I'm going to get these cut also at 22.5 degrees, and then I'll be left with my center section. Hopefully this piece will be enough to do it. If not, I'll have to go run outside and grab another piece. It's going to be about 9 inches. Nine inches, yeah. 9 inches. Let's go with 9. I have this guide set at 22.5 degrees. Let's go get these set on the car and see how they're looking. Alright, let's get these cut. I'm going to get them shortened, and then I got to cut this down once I get these all said and done. There's always so much figuring out to do, you know? I'll get you guys right in front of the heater. Alright, let's see how it fits. I'll show you guys where I'm at. I got the mount tacked in place. My camera is shut off again. I don't know why. Seems like it's been acting up a lot lately. But you can see the radius rod's out of the way. I ended up taking it out and then retacking it, taking it out, retacking it, because it just wasn't right. But I finally got this here is at 0 degrees. Each one of these is at 3 degrees without me leaning on the chassis. I got my angle finder on my pinion right now. It's at, well, I just moved it. Right about there, it's at about 3 degrees. So what I need to do now is I actually just need to cut these ends off. I need to get the rod ends put onto here, get some tabs fabbed up, cut them out with my plasma cutter, I think, and get some tabs mounted here. What I'll end up doing is I'll end up heating the radius rods at the mount on the rear axle so I can heat and pull them out. I don't want them under tension, so I'll probably pull them out here, and the mounts will probably go one here and probably one over here just to get away from the drive shaft a little bit. And then I got to figure out how I'm going to do the mount for the torque rod, where exactly it is I'm going to put it. I'm going to figure out which side I'm going to run it off of on the banjo. I forget at this point because it's been a while since I've used it, but it'll probably end up being somewhere in this region here. And again, that will also be with a Heim joint, and that'll be it. And then the rear axle assembly will be basically all done. Now, I've said it in the past, there's going to be a lot of finish welding. The person who buys this car is probably going to want to box the frame. I didn't, just for the sake of moving the project along. One less thing I had to do. The frame isn't perfect. There are some pits on the frame. I mean, granted, it's 90-something years old. It will need to be boxed. I would definitely recommend boxing it, and that was the reason why I added the plate here on either side. So you just have to cut your boxing plates around that, figure out, dive it in maybe, figure out where you want to do around the transmission cross member, and then obviously forwards and backwards. So, but I would highly recommend that. So what I'm going to do now is probably throw a couple more welds on this, and I'm going to get these lopped off here and get my Heim joints with the bungs added onto my radius rods. And then probably after that, I'm going to shut the camera off, hang out with Allie tonight, and then come back tomorrow, Friday, have the day off, and finish this mount up. That'll be good. I got my radius rod ends cut off. You can see here, just cut them off. So those are gone now. I got my bungs here ready to go. But what I need to do is I'm gonna heat up the ends of these radius rods. I don't want to really shorten them anymore because I need them to be a certain length to make sure that they reach the mount. So I don't want to shorten them, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my torch and I'm going to heat these up cherry red inside, so then I can take my hammer and take these bungs and pound these bungs inside these radius rods. Now I know everybody does things a little different. I'm just doing it this way because that's kind of the easiest way to make this happen right now. Alright, so we're going to let that cool down. It's probably going to be it for me for the day. These will end up being up here a little bit, spread out some. That'll be good. Alright, so where we're at, it's the next day, and these bungs have since cooled down. So now what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to end up having to weld these in place, but I'm not going to do that quite yet. So my next step is to heat these areas here on the bottom of the ends of the radius rods. So I need to heat this area right here past the mount, so I can pull the radius rod this way and spread it outwards, so I can get the end with the Heim joint set in the position it needs to be, and then I'll get those brackets made. But I can't get the brackets made until I get this heated and bent. Alright, so you should be able to see those mounts where they opened up. Like I said, I just pulled them outwards. Now what I need to do is, I think I'm going to finish weld all down here, these top 3 sides, and if the bottom, if I can get to the bottom without flipping the frame over, I will. But I want to be able to finish weld this so I can make my mount here, so I can have my flanges come off of this area right here, and then I'll have a space to bolt my heim joints to. What I think I'm going to do is I'm going to tack weld these bungs in place now. Quick and simple. So now, like I said, I'm going to clean this up real quick, and I'm going to get these areas welded up. I don't want to be in a situation or a position where I can't reach these areas to weld. So I'm going to weld these up now. We'll get back to cutting the brackets out with my plasma torch and getting them fitted onto the cross member. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to take my boxing plate, it's 3/16" plate, and I'm going to get this measured out, about 2-inch sections roughly, and get them cut out, get the holes drilled that I need to get drilled, and get them welded onto the car, and get these mounts finally done. And that's going to be it. Alright, now the only other thing I'm going to have to do is this gets wider, so I'll just end up trimming it down. Whatever the width is here, I'll just measure it and run it up, and then end up cutting that down so it'll all be even. Alright, it's cut out. Whoa. Woo, that is hot. I'm going to add a little weld across the sides of these that I'll cut off afterwards. Figure out exactly where my mark needs to be, and I'm going to get these drilled out and then get them mounted. But I want to weld them together so when I drill the hole, I know the holes are all in the same place. So now what I need to do is I need to get a hole figure out exactly where on these plates I need to put my hole, get the hole center punched and marked, and get them drilled out on the drill press. Alright, so that's it. Let's get them cleaned up. Let me get them cut apart, cleaned up. I think what I'll do is I'll radius the edges just to clean them up a little bit so they don't look so industrial, and then get them fitted on the car. I got my 4 mounts now. Let's get them bolted on and figured out where they're gonna go. Because I don't know yet. The inside ones will be full length. The outside ones, I'll have to cut them down a touch. That's alright. I'll figure out the measurements once they're bolted on. So what I need to do before I get anything tack welded here, I need to get my angle finder and get that pinion set. I kind of need to hold these up somehow. Maybe like a jack stand or something with a block of wood under it to hold these up where they're going to be to keep my angle of my pinion correct. Once that's all set, I just got to kind of flex them out just a little bit to get these tabs to connect with the mount. And once that's all set, I'll just get this outside one or the inside one tacked in place, and then I'll get the outside one cut down and fitted, and then I'll do the same on the driver's side. Once that's done, I'll probably get some things finished welded on this. And that's gonna be it. So let's go grab my jack and get this. I'll grab my my angle finder, and get this figured out where it's gonna go. Alright, so now what I need to do is I got these inside plates tacked in place. I gotta undo the hardware so I can measure for the outside plate and get it fitted to the cross member. So I need to just get a measurement from, I mean really anywhere, the center line or the inside mark, the inside edge of the eyelet to this. So we're gonna get this cut down and get this fitted to the cross member on both sides, obviously. Then once that's done, I'll get these welded. I got my pinion angle set, it's at 3 degrees. All right, let me get this outside mount figured out, and then we'll be in good shape. Let me get this cut down and see if it'll fit. If it does, I'll get the other side done. Bend this tab a little bit, like that. There we go. You know, it kind of goes underneath the bottom edge of the cross member where it comes down at an angle. Again, I'm just going to tack this in place in spots I can get to it, in case it has to be removed in the future. So there's that one. Get this other one undone and do the same thing to the driver's side. Now I know everybody has their way of doing things, and mine might be different. I understand that. One there. I'm just going to do the same thing I just did. I'm just going to eyeball it. Just trying to line up vertically the center of the hole in the bracket with the center of the hole in the heim joint. And make it a mark. And then I'm going to eyeball the center line again. We'll get this one cut down, and we'll get this one tacked in place. Alright everyone, well that's going to be it for me for this. Nah, missed it. What I'll do next is I'm going to pull the motor and transmission out. I'll pull the grill shell and the radiator back off. I do need to finish the mounting on the radiator and grill shell. I have the Model A style radiator mount. I'm going to get that installed, so that'll be done. I'll have to build some radiator stay rods. So those are the rods that go from the firewall all the way up to the grill shell or the radiator. But first things first, what I'm going to do now is, now that everything's kind of done as far as fabrication goes, I'm gonna lift up the chassis and then remove it from the jack stands and lower it down on the floor. After that's done, I'm going to pull the motor and transmission out, and I can then at that point get the motor mounts and the transmission mount finish welded, because I can't do it at this point with them in there. They just don't have access to them. And then once that's done, probably going to mount the steering box. So I'll get the steering box put back in there, finish up that mount. It's just going to drill a couple holes for those flanges, for that flange on that steering box, so I'll get that mounted. After that, I'll get the body lifted up and put on its nose. Once I get everything finished welded underneath the bottom of the car, I'll get that in red oxide primer. Once that's dry, I'll be able to get that thing back down on the car. But I'm going to spray the whole body red oxide primer just so it's all one color and it looks halfway decent. And that is going to be it. At that point, it's going to be done. I'm going to just try selling it as it sits, once the body and chassis are back together again and it's rolled outside. That's it for another episode of This Old Hot Rod. Thanks everyone for following along. I appreciate you guys' support. Thanks everyone for just kind of sticking around. This took me a lot longer than what I thought it was going to, just because, you know, work gets in the way in life, and like you guys know, I was just away last week or 2 weeks ago on vacation, and it's just these projects take a lot of time, because obviously they get bigger and bigger because you run into issues, and you know, that's just what happens with these cars. So they're never simple. But I'm hoping at this point, good, the heat's off, I can stop yelling. So I'm hoping at this point now, once the car gets put back together and kind of looks like a whole car, I'm hoping I can get someone excited about it, you know. when I see old cars like this sitting on the side of the road for sale, I think it's pretty awesome, and it's just going to take one person to fall in love with it to buy it, and I'm hoping that happens. So again, thanks again. Appreciate you guys for watching, and then and that's it. So appreciate it. Thanks everyone. See you soon. Take care. Bye bye.